children? How y'all doing? Whoever you are, everyone's welcome to your boy Peter here, aka Peter Freakout 10, baby. Bring you guys an episode of the Movie Review Show, where the good movies are always reviewed. Okay, back again doing our movie review, and we're doing our first horror movie this year. And we're talking about a film that was actually supposed to be released in the summer of 1998, but it actually got moved to January of 99. Why, you may be asking? I have no idea. But it's a film that I thought had an interesting premise based on what I heard, and the connections, the people they had behind it, got me interested. And from the pics I've seen of the Fangoria magazine that they had on it, the one thing that they were really pushing forward was the special effects. And those are the main thing that really caught my eye for this film. So I put it at the top of my list of films to check out in January. And what film is that, you may be asking? What film could be at the top of my list for a January horror film? Well, let me ask you guys something. What do you get when you take the biggest scream queen and take Deep Rising with a hint of
Screamers
and Event Horizon? Well, you get Virus. But how does it all play out? Well, strap on your rocket launchers, get yourself the best robot spiders to pour yourself a drink and get some popcorn, and let's talk Virus. Now, Virus was a film made in the year 1999, and this is directed by a guy named John Bruno. Now, if that name doesn't sound familiar to anybody, I wouldn't be surprised, because this is mostly a special effects guy, mostly in visual effects on various 80s and 90s films, a good chunk of them being under James Cameron. The last one he did before directing this was Titanic, so he came off of a high horse. But he has had his hand in directing stuff, most specifically a segment in heavy metal. But this is his main film debut to directing. What surprised me, though, is the fact that I found this out after I started looking into info on the film. This is actually based on a comic book of the same name under the Dark Horse Comics label that started publication back in 1992 and was created by Chuck Pfarrer. I believe I'm pronouncing his name right. But he also writes this film. And this is a guy who was actually a Navy SEAL before he went into writing screenplays for action films. One of them, the most obvious, being Navy SEALs. What surprised me, though, I couldn't believe this. This guy actually wrote Hard Target. I shit you not. The Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, Hard Target. And one of my all-time favorite action films. I'm still in shock. He also wrote The Jackal, which I like. So this guy had his hand in some great stuff. But the comic is actually still going on. And originally, before becoming a comic, Chuck had actually come up with the idea with a friend of his named Jim Beam and attempted to pitch it to Universal to get a movie going. At the time, though, Universal said no due to the amount of effects that they had in the original script and what would be required of the budget. So he took the idea to Dark Horse Comics, who made it into a comic, and it became a success for the company. Trying his luck again, Chuck came across Gail Ann Hurd, who he had shown the script to, and she agreed to help him get the film going. At the same time, though, Universal was made aware of the success that the comic was having and what they just turned away. So once he came back in with the script, he showed it again and they accepted, lying that they always liked the script. The only thing left to do was choose a director. They originally wanted James Cameron to direct, but at the time he was preoccupied with Titanic. He did, however, recommend John Bruno, being that Universal had already had history with John, being that he was a co-director on the Terminator 2 ride he did for Universal. Gail also pushed for him to direct, being that she also had history with him. He was at first hesitant, though, being that he didn't like the script or the comic, but he began to rethink his decision while helping James Cameron shoot Titanic, being that there were various aspects of the script that he liked, and James Cameron's push made him agree to do the film, with one request being that he would have a hand in the screenplay, for which he did. He was given a budget of $75 million and they got their cast together. The movie was shot in Virginia on a real ship that was a retired missile range instrumentation ship, which in order to make the ship appear like it was out to sea, they took a horizontal bar on the ship and both raised and lowered it so they could conceal the horizontal line and make it appear like it was far out there than it actually was. They also had some areas of the ship remodeled for the film. There were some areas that they couldn't remodel due to the working conditions, so they used half of the ship for the final film. For the effects, the team brought in Steve Johnson, who had done the effects for Species, to handle the designs of the mechanical monsters that you see throughout the film. The biggest thing with the effects was the 9-foot-tall Goliath, which was built in 3 months. They also made a smaller version of it when it strikes people. All of those were operated by a crew of 5 people, reminiscent of how Chucky was operated in his movies. There were some moments of CGI, and those moments were handled by Tippett Studio, the same company that handled the effects for the amazing Jurassic Park. Shooting lasted for a specific amount of time, as the film was originally scheduled for a summer of 1998 release, which had to be postponed and moved to January of 99. I know they were hoping this film was going to be a big hit because of the people involved and the comic success, and they marketed it with toys, which a company called Resurus made. They also re-released the comics. Sadly, though, that didn't get people in the theater, as the movie opened on January 15th, 1999, and it didn't do well at all, as it opened to number 9. As Varsity Blues at the same time had opened the same day and was dominating the box office, grossing only over $6 million. Definitely not earning a profit, so you can tell the film is a bomb for that. Woo. Along with that, the film also received negative reviews from critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, it carries a 14%. Critics praised the film for its special effects, but criticized the movie for its predictability, feeling derivative of other movies similar to this, and the similarities to a film that came out a year earlier called Deep Rising, something of which Roger Ebert, who hated that film, rated this much lower, claiming it to be worse than Deep Rising, and even criticized the film's underlit look. The audience side is a bit higher, but not by much, as it is a 23%, and on IMDb it is a 5 out of 10. Now this is one of those films that I want to like. I really want to love it and sit here and praise it. And I'm desperate when I say that. Because on paper, this is my type of movie. It has what I'm looking for when it comes to these sort of films that, accompanied with the special effects, really make for a fun monster film when done well. But walking out of the theater, I felt underwhelmed by this movie. I really felt disappointed. It wasn't the film I wanted. I can't say this is a bad movie, but it is a painfully average one. And it pales in comparison to films that I think have done it better, like Deep Rising. Here, though, the problem with this movie is, like I said, there's potential for a fun sci-fi horror film. And there's hints here and there of that promise and that sense of ambition, especially when it comes to its effects and gore, which are a sight to behold. But without the gore and without the effects, it's boring. It's very boring, especially when compared to other horror films or sci-fi horror films with a similar setting and story. I'll explain why later, though. But with the cast in this film, you got Jamie Lee Curtis, Scream Queen, of course, known for a role in Halloween, Prom Night, as well as being in other films like My Girls and True Lies. Donald Sutherland, Kiefer Sutherland's dad. He was in Animal House, A Time to Kill. He was also in Fallen. William Baldwin, who, of course, one of the Baldwin brothers from Backdraft. Joanna Pacula. But she was in My Giant with Billy Crystal and a bunch of other people I don't know. But getting into the plot is basically we meet this woman named Kit, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, who is working with this tugboat crew called the Sea Star, led by this man named Everton, played by Donald Sutherland, who, due to his irresponsibility and in a drunken stupidity, ends up forcing the crew to deliver the cargo in a typhoon, putting money first before the safety of his crew. This results in them losing the cargo and damaging the ship, which engineer Steve, played by William Baldwin, cannot fix unless they find shelter. Then, out of nowhere, on the radar, there appears this ship, which they call for, but no one answers. So they get closer and they see the ship is completely abandoned. Seeing dollar signs, Everton decides that being the ship is abandoned, he's going to try and take the ship and auction it for money. That is until they find a survivor who tells them that basically what went on was in space, this life force came out of nowhere and took control of the computer's mainframe and other various machines and tools, and basically looks at mankind as a virus and wants to use the bodies of the crew members on the ship to take the machinery and make his own, like the crew who were on the ship before them, to create his own army so that he can wipe out mankind. So now the crew needs to fight for their life and find a way off the ship before they become the guinea pigs. Will they be able to escape the ship, or will they be the next test subject in an experiment that even Alex Murphy would find painful? The thing with Virus is there's definitely a sense of ambition to it, like I mentioned earlier, especially in the story department. Because the story on paper, I think, is very interesting, because it does something different with the creature feature side of things, being that it's not a monster on board like, say, Deep Rising or Mimic, or a demonic presence like, say, Event Horizon, but rather it's a life force using the electronics in the world to kill people and create its own army, which does sound a bit like Maximum Overdrive, but I think in a few areas this does do some things that make it stand on its own, in particular when it comes to the creatures themselves that this life force makes. I thought that aspect of the film was really interesting and somewhat different. So there's a strong starting point for a villain there. There's a strong setup for a horror film with some creativity, but in execution, it falls flat in the sea with cinder blocks attached. Because first off, the tone is all over the place. It can't decide if it wants to be a sci-fi horror film or a sci-fi action film, because there's points that it wants to be alien, then at other points it wants to be aliens, but it's nowhere near close to either. Whereas compared to Aliens, where it struck a natural balance between horror and action in the correct sections of the film, and that benefited particular scenes. Here, it just comes across as a very knee-jerk, sudden change of tone, sometimes in the same scene. And none of the stuff that the film goes for in the horror sections that are supposed to be scary are genuinely scary, especially when it comes to how it presents its threat. Because the moments when it's on the scary side of things and you see it making people into these robot humans, besides that area, which do get some genuine chills, you rarely see it do anything. And it taking over the ship was all off screen, so you don't get a sense of this life force being some sort of threat and fearful that our characters will survive when it has done nothing throughout the film. And even when it starts killing them, it only manages to kill one member and manipulates the captain into being turned into one of those things. And the other deaths are just caused by the crew's stupidity. So the horror is dealt with very amateurishly. When it comes to the action scenes, the firefights are fun, but they are few and far between. And then to add salt to the wound, the main leads, besides Daniel Baldwin, who I'll talk about when I get into the acting, I had a hard time getting invested in, being that they don't have any form of character development to them. You meet them all, and none of them have any form of character that makes you distinguish one from the other. All you get on them is Donald Sutherland's character as a drunken sailor, Jamie Lee Curtis was in the Navy, and Daniel Baldwin, the most likable of them all, wants to buy an island, and he's good with mechanics. So there's no one to root for. And it saddens me about all this because the story has a great idea and there's some small dosages of it injected into the film, but it feels held back in particular areas. Even on a technical side, I'm very mixed on. I do have some good things to say, though. I appreciate the fact that they shot the film on a real boat. The set of the boat looks very good. I like the design of the boat. I like the room where the robot is experimenting on the humans and how the room has all those robotic arms and legs at work. So the set design I can compliment. But an area I'm very in the middle with is the directing. You can tell this is a first-time director because John Bruno has no idea how to direct horror or how to establish mood or atmosphere for particular scenes, and his attempt to give scares really come across as amateurish. His placement of the camera at times feels a bit put the camera here, just shoot that, put the camera there, no sense of flair to them. Sometimes they feel like they're using the same shot or movement of it a bit too much. There's some points where it feels also like he's trying to emulate one of James Cameron's films, more so True Lies James Cameron and not the James Cameron of Aliens. So the directing doesn't go well with the tone that the movie is going for. And it just looks drab and dull in some areas, especially in the daytime shots. They carry this gray looking color scheme that is just blasé and boring to look at. I know some people don't like the lighting in particular moments of this film. I really didn't have a problem with it, especially when there's some scenes that it's done to hide the people controlling the effects. That's the only time you see some energy from John Bruno's directing, is during those scenes, and in particular the firefights or any moment dealing with special effects or gore, which is understandable being this is an effects guy. And those are the best shot sequences of the film. And even in those areas, they have their problems because he shoots them in a way sometimes where you can tell the machinery is being controlled by a friggin' trolley. But besides those moments, you can tell he's having fun shooting the film. But it does kind of show that he wasn't fit to helm this film and really could have benefited from a better director. Someone like John Carpenter really would have made this film work, as he has had made films that balanced horror and action perfectly. Someone who has experience in this field, unlike John Bruno, who doesn't know what the hell he's doing when it comes to moments like that. The acting is also very hit and miss. The one I didn't expect to be as bad as she was Jamie Lee Curtis. I'm sorry to say, this is her worst performance, a total far cry from her role in Halloween 1, 2, and even H2O, who had emotion, was lively, and a sense of personality. Here she sounds bored, wooden, and just rather be doing something else than be in this movie. I don't buy her character being this Navy SEAL and taking on this big-ass machine when she's as thin as a twig. In fact, she's not even the one who kills the beast at the end, so you don't feel any sense of payoff with her character growth or evolving past the roots that she started from. And it doesn't feel like there's any form of a connection among her and the team, so there's no sense of chemistry, so you don't buy these guys being a crew and having each other's back. Donald Sutherland, you have hamming it up as a drunken sailor, which makes me feel bad for Donald Sutherland because this is a talented actor, and you have him working with material that has him playing this Popeye wannabe and doing nothing but being a tool with people and just sitting around while everyone fights for their life. The only one I actually liked was Daniel Baldwin. He's working with the script to the best of his abilities. He's the one who's trying to give his character the most amount of personality he can with the script. He's the one trying to play off the other cast members, and he at least has actions in this film that in some way make you root for him. They do drop hints of a romance between him and Jamie Lee Curtis, but that goes nowhere, and I don't buy it because the two don't have any sense of chemistry or any hints of the two having a relationship, but he does well for what he's given. The only one I actually liked was Joanna Pacula. or however you say her name, because she's actually the one working the best with the emotion, especially being that she was involved with the massacre before they got here, and she's finding ways to protect herself. Like you see, she survived and hid in the infirmary, so she's not self-reliant on everybody, and she doesn't come across as wimpy or stuck up, so I can appreciate they didn't go that route with her character. And she's the one who does the self-sacrifice that kills the monster. Nobody has saw the film, so I don't care. I don't think anybody's gonna care if I spoil. I'll still put up a spoiler there for the both of them, so just be on the lookout if you guys are gonna be, or if you guys don't want any spoils, if you're gonna check this film out. She should have been the lead, though. She has more of a presence to her than Jamie Lee Curtis does, and she plays better off the cast, unlike Jamie Lee Curtis. The other people you got, like Marshall Bell, David Egby, and Cliff Curtis, they're unmemorable. They're just there for the monster to kill and pale in comparison to other horror films that have had these characters and done them better before. Whereas films like Aliens, The Thing, Jaws, Leviathan, and even Deep Rising, which Roger Ebert, no, Deep Rising is not one of the worst of 98. They know how to develop their characters, and they know how to give them at least some form of a story before the film started. And the actors worked well with the roles given to them. They helped contributed to the arc that the writer intended. None of that is here, though. I will give it this, though. The one thing that this movie succeeds at is in its effects. They look amazing. This is where you really start to see the ambition from the team. Because I think the designs for the mechanical beasts are really impressive. I like the crab-like monster that you see running around, and each monster has a tool attached to it, like a drill, a saw, or a nail gun, or even the huge monster at the end that looks like something out of the Mangler. It's amazing how big they were able to make that thing. So a lot of kudos to the effects artists. I like the addition of the flesh on the animatronics too, kind of giving that touch that they were once human. They were combined with someone's body in this sort of Frankenstein design. And just how they were able to make it move with the mix of animatronics and CGI, which is scaled back on the CGI and it isn't heavily relied on. It's done seamlessly. I also like how they made people like Donald Sutherland become a part of this experiment. The makeup on him is fantastic. Kind of looks like something out of RoboCop, especially the walk he does. And there's some cool gore, like the monster grabs a guy up and punches a hole through him. Practical effects, I'll say that. There's some good practicality. I also like the effect when they open up the dude's head and you see the brain and there's some work being done on him. Looks practical, same for the stunt work, and if there was a stunt double, I didn't notice it. But that's pretty much the only reason to see this movie, is for the effects. And even then, you're not going to get a huge body count, so even in the gore department, it's lacking. But the effects look very good. Just don't go in expecting anything else from this film. Now look, I didn't want this review to come across as negative as it did, because there's some good bones in this movie. And there's a good starting foundation to work off in this film. But the more the movie goes forward, it feels like it takes a step back. Thus why I really can't recommend it. If you want to see a better monster movie set on a ship, see Deep Rising. Don't listen to Roger Ebert's review of it. Or if you want a better machine-like monster movie, see either The Mangler or Death Machine. Those do it much better, and you don't have to pay as much to see them. If you really want to see it for yourself, I suggest waiting till it comes on TV or get the DVD or VHS. Thus why, when it comes down to rating this film, I cannot give it any more than a 4.8 out of 10. It's not bad enough to earn the seal of shit, but it could have been such a better film, especially with the talent on display here and the people they had behind it. So yeah, that is my review for Virus. And next time I'm going to do a review of a much better film, The Prince of Egypt. So be on the lookout for that. I will be continuing Turok 2 tonight when I come home from work, because I had to clean up my room today because I have some people coming to clean. So be on the lookout for those. I will work on the Prince of Egypt review. Then I'm going to work on a review of Varsity Blues and She's All That. Those will be coming along the pipeline, so be on the lookout for those. And I'm going to try and get Tomb Raider all beaten so I can get a review of it going. I have started writing out the production process of it, especially with the book I got, which I'll show in the update. That'll be working on too. But that's pretty much what I have planned for right now. I will see you guys later. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of Virus. Are you one of the few people who've seen it? Do you guys have any thoughts on it? Are you one of the few who liked it? Would love to know you guys' thoughts down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.